Hey y'all, welcome to the TikTok Homeschool Conference. May's theme is homeschooling with neurodivergent and special needs kids. Make sure you go to Erica John's How to Homeschool so that you can sign up, subscribe, make sure that you get the schedule of what's still to come and what they did earlier this week. Make sure you follow those speakers as well so you don't miss anything. Today is Thursday. Today's theme is dyslexia and dysgraphia, and that's what I'm talking about. This is part 2. So if you didn't watch part 1, which is where I talked about what are the signs of dyslexia, make sure you go listen to that, but don't freak out because part 2 is I'm here to tell you, okay, so your kid's showing some of these signs. What do we do about it? Okay. So first of all, like I said in part 1, it could just be an age thing. It could just be a maturity thing. It could just be part of the developmental norms. It's just that maybe your child is a late bloomer. Okay. So just keep that in mind. However, if your kid is showing a lot of these signs, especially with the visual things, because remember, dyslexia is not a vision problem, it is a processing issue that they have. They just process things differently and at different parts of the brain. Okay, so the first thing you want to do if you think that they have reversals and words are moving on the page, okay, that's what my son used to say. Words were floating on the page, right? Go get their eyes checked. One, check their vision. Maybe they just need glasses. A lot of times that's not it, but hey, that could fix the problem. Second thing is go get eye tracking. So go to an ophthalmologist, and have their vision checked for tracking. A lot of times kids just aren't tracking. Visual tracking isn't quite there yet. And so they just need vision therapy. And once they get that, the problem is solved. Okay, so go do that first, all right? Also keep in mind, a lot of signs that go with dyslexia are also signs of ADHD. So maybe your child is just ADHD, okay? And so if that's the case, you can still do some of the things we're going to be talking about, but keep in mind a lot of their executive functioning skills, their inability to remember certain things in order and stuff like that might be a ADHD thing, not necessarily dyslexia. Now, if all the things that we talked about in part 1 continue to persist and they're way past the normal development, right? Okay, then let's just go ahead and assume, okay, maybe they are dyslexic. So until you know for sure when you get them tested or not, just teach them as if they are dyslexic, okay? And what I mean by that is I'm going to give you a whole bunch of strategies and things that you could do if they are dyslexic. But what I mean by that is go ahead and make those accommodations that they need now. Use a very strong phonetic reading program with them now. Now, if you find out later on that they're not dyslexic and they were just late bloomers and once the reading kicked in, off they went and they weren't dyslexic, not a problem. You just gave them a very strong foundation in phonics, right? So they have a good, strong foundation for reading. However, if you find out later that they are dyslexic, then you actually started the intervention for it much sooner and they're off to a good start. Okay, now keep in mind, home is the best place for kids who have learning differences because you can make those accommodations. So yes, if they were in the public school system or a charter school, they're going to get an IEP. But what does that stand for? An individualized educational plan. Isn't that what we do as homeschool moms? Okay, and so you're going to be able to make those accommodations. If your kid needs more time, if your kid needs to walk around while he thinks, if he needs to do speech to text, if he needs to dictate, if he needs to narrate, if he needs help with his spelling, whatever that is, you're going to be able to do that with them and for them if you are homeschooling. Okay. Now, a lot of moms will ask me, should we get them tested? Well, that's up to you. So if you plan on them staying home and homeschooling all the way through high school, you really don't need to because you can continue to make those accommodations until things click. Okay. Now, if you think that they might be going back into the public school system and you might want some of those services, then go ahead and do that. Okay. However, I highly recommend that if your student is college bound and they are dyslexic, that at least by their junior or senior year in high school, you get them officially tested with an educational psychologist so that you can have that diagnosis and they could go off to college or sometimes go off to the workplace with their ADA accommodations. It comes in very handy. Usually by that point, they don't need the accommodations, but every now and then, if they are, say, in college, they might need the time and a half or something like that, okay? So just go ahead and keep making those accommodations. You really don't have to get them formally tested unless you have the money for it or your school district allows you to do it. All right, so some of you might be saying, who is this Carrie and what does she know? Okay, first of all, I'm not an expert in dyslexia. I don't have a PhD from a university in it. However, I do have a PhD in it in personal experience. I was a homeschool mom for over 20 years, homeschooled both of our kids from birth all the way through high school graduation. And one of my kids was dyslexic, had dysgraphia, ADHD. So I learned through life lots of research, and I was trained at the Linda Mood Bell Institute. Okay, so first of all, most importantly, I want to tell you this: dyslexia is not a learning disability. Dyslexia is a teaching disability. Kids with dyslexia, our kids who have dyslexia, they have a gift. They are not dumb. It's not an intelligent thing. Okay, it is. They don't need to change. We need to change the way we teach them. Okay, we just need to tap into their strengths. So kids who are dyslexic are right brain thinkers. All right, so they're global thinkers. They see patterns. They're very creative. They're very spatial thinkers, right? So you want to tap into those things when you're teaching them. So first of all, you want to give them lots of time to play. You want to give them lots of time to move, especially before their lessons, during their lessons, and even after their lessons, because science tells us and proves to us that that helps make the synapses connect faster and longer. Okay, so they remember information and retain it if they exercise before, during, and after. So make sure you do that with them. Okay, keep their lessons short and simple. 20 minutes tops, take a break, come back and do it. Okay, they need those short lessons. If you're Charlotte Mason, you understand the 20-20-20. Okay, they need lots of review, lots and lots of review, because they need to connect those synapses. Their executive functioning skills need to be developed, and so in order to build those synapses with sight words and sounds and things like that, you need to make sure you have constant review. So you're constantly reviewing the sight words, you're constantly reviewing their math facts, you're constantly reviewing the sounds that the letters make. Okay, you're going to do it in a way that makes sense to them, but they need that constant review. All right, tap into their strengths. So if they're musical, then turn things into things that they have to remember through music, right? If they're athletic, which a lot of kids with dyslexia are, let them use those strengths, right? If they do love to tell stories, use those kinds of things. So whatever their strengths are, tap into those and spend more time on that, developing their gifts and their strengths, than time you spend on the things that frustrate them, aka reading. I'm not saying you're not going to teach them to read or have reading lessons. You are. You're just going to give them more time to work on the things that they enjoy and they're good at, because that will help build their self-esteem as well. Okay, do something called mastery teaching, meaning you're going to stick with a concept and only one concept or two concepts at a time until they get it, and then you move on to something else. Okay, so the kind of homeschool day where they're going from doing some math, then they're doing some reading, then they're doing some history and some science, and then art, and then their music lessons. It's so much in their brain. Mastery teaching is better. So hang out with math for a while, hang out with science for a while. Okay, so think about doing more mastery teaching, and this helps kids with ADHD as well. Okay, make sure you do lots of cross midline exercises, because that will help connect the right and the left side of the brain. All right, so do some crawling and exercises where they're crossing their arms and stuff like that. Make sure you use phonetic based instruction. That is what they need the most. Okay, do lots and lots of read aloud. I can't tell you that. Read aloud, read aloud, read aloud. Even if they start to read on their own, you give them books that are below their reading level so they can practice on their efficiency. You keep reading aloud the really good books to them. Okay, those sight words, you have to keep reviewing those sight words, but do it in a fun way. Make everything a game as much as you possibly can. Use Audible. It's not cheating. Wordless picture books. It's not cheating. Do lots and lots of discussions and conversations, because that's where their thinking is happening, and that's where they are retaining the information. Okay, so Y'all, I'm Coffee with Carrie, Carrie DeFrancisco. Make sure that you join me live today with Erica Johns at How to Homeschool. We're going to be doing a Q&A session on all things homeschooling. I'm going to be doing a giveaway. Make sure you listen to my other 2 sessions that I did for the TikTok Homeschool Conference on dyslexia and dysgraphia. Go to my website, coffeewithcarrie.org. Book a coffee date. We can meet one-on-one. I can help you with your homeschooling. And then make sure you subscribe to Coffee with Carrie Homeschool Podcast. I drop a new episode every Thursday.